Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I'm your host, Barbara Gullen. And Tony, I am bummed out that last week's podcast is not only not obsolete, but that our government shutdown is still going on.
Yeah, as of this recording, it's still happening. What are we at now? 10, 11, 12 days? It's been
It's day 10 or 11,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Well, we shut down. Okay,
The
this is
first?
horrible. Let's look at our math here. Yes, we shut down at midnight between the 30th and the 1st, and it's
So
the 10th.
yeah, so 10
Yes.
days, yeah. Well,
Isn't it great that we can figure that out in the financial services industry?
well, you're a financial advisor, you're a numbers person. I was personally told there would be no math. That's why I have you, Barb. That's
Oh,
why you're
okay.
here. I was
Okay.
told, you know me. I'm just here for the eye candy.
And the
Everyone
comic relief. And
Everyone
the
knows
comic relief.
that. No, I'm not here for I'm here. I have the perfect face for radio, so I'm here for comic relief, hopefully a little bit. But most shows, you have better jokes than I do, so I'm here with bad dad jokes. Yeah, I mean, we were debating.
I'd be
We were
making
either,
bad football jokes too. The only
y-
thing that's giving me any hope is the Eagles lost last night to the Giants.
yeah, isn't that crazy?
That was weird. We're
Yeah.
in a parallel universe.
Yeah, that's 2 in a row the Eagles have lost, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's
it
kinda
is.
nutty. Well, anyway, the show today is called Government Shutdown Blues because there are things we haven't covered that are starting to happen, and
Mhm.
I can't wait to get into that, but I like your alternate title. What was it going to be?
Oh my gosh. Oh, the fate of the shutdown?
The Fate of the Shutdown, and, I think most of our listeners get that. It's a take on the Taylor Swift title, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
which I know you were giving me a hard time before the show because I have not. I mean, I've heard the singles, that were
mhm,
released
mhm.
before the album came out. So I've actually listened to 3 songs, but I have not listened to the whole record yet. And I know you were giving me a hard time. I'm probably the only one in the world at this point that has not listened to the new
I
Taylor
would
Swift
say
album.
I would say that my ex-husband's probably in that list too, because he can't stand Taylor
Well,
Swift.
let's
But
not.
we won't go there.
No, we're not going there. And I don't like the comparison.
No,
And
there's
we
no
will. You and
comparison.
I will talk after the show
There is
about that
no
comment.
comparison. It's just like that really weird Venn diagram thing, and it's like
Yes,
the
it's
one
the.
little pinpoint where you
Okay,
guys
good. Okay,
overlap,
you
okay?
redeemed yourself. That was for a minute there. That was super hurtful.
I would never hurt you, Tony.
I know, not intentionally. Okay,
No.
so let's get into it. The government shutdown blues. There's so many things now that it's and I'm seeing more and more. This is being talked about more and more. But in case people and your listeners and people in the community haven't heard, this is starting to affect some things that can affect our economy, right?
It is so much more than 750,000 people either having to go to work for free or being furloughed.
Which
Um,
is the biggest impact, and we did talk about that last week. We're not making light of that,
Not at
but it
all,
has
not at
overall
all.
economic impact on our whole country, which affects everyone, right?
It
Millions of
does,
people.
and, it is everything from right now, it looks like there is no end in sight to the shutdown. So, we have the first round of paychecks that these federal employees are not going to receive. Legislatively, they should get them back when the government reopens. But right now, that's anybody's guess when everybody's going to quit having a spitting contest and decide that, gee, we were hired to take care of the needs of the people and we need to put the needs of the people first.
Yeah.
There are arguments on both sides of the aisle for why this is and isn't happening. And I don't want to get into that. But I do want to point out things like the Federal Reserve normally has their meetings in the middle of the month where they decide monetary policy and decide whether or not they're going to make a change to the federal funds interest rate. They discuss a lot of things, but that's the thing that most people pay attention to
Right. It
right
is.
now. And right now, they have postponed that meeting to the last week of October in hopes that the government will reopen and they can get some of that economic data that they need to make their decision.
Yeah. Well, and I think that obviously this affects a lot of people, and the Fed not being able to hold their meeting and lower interest rates or do what they will with interest rates, keep them the same, lower them. A lot of people expected them at this one to lower them again, and I think
Mhm.
the stock market, our economy, and businesses were looking at that, and that affects all of us. So
It does.
it's interesting that the government shutdown is actually delaying that possibility just because of the government shutdown. So the Fed
Mm.
is delaying their meeting. Um, Also, a lot of our listeners are thinking about retirement planning or are in retirement, and this might possibly affect them because it's going to delay the COLA announcement, right?
It is. It's right as of right now, it's delaying what that cost of living adjustment is going to be for Social Security, to find out how much of an increase people are going to get in their Social Security checks next year. But that COLA number also ties to federal pensions and is a factor in how much of an increase federal employees receive in their pension checks as retirees every month.
Yeah,
N
yeah.
not And let's talk about another thing with federal employees. I'm sorry I cut you off there,
No,
but, everybody that took the deferred retire not everybody, but a lot of people who took the deferred retirement option, technically, their last day on the job was September 30th, and there are now not people present to process retirement paperwork. So, those federal employees collected a paycheck while they were deferring their retirement and not going into the office. They are now not going to be collecting that paycheck, and there is no telling when their pension is going to start. They were already behind in processing retirement requests. I have a client who retired at the end of August, and they still hadn't contacted him to finish processing his retirement paperwork. It's a good thing he went to another job and isn't relying on his pension for
can
his
you
livelihood or his
imagine?
income.
Yeah,
But, when you take a segment of the population like that, that no longer has discretionary spending money,
right.
that is trying to figure out how to make a house payment, how to make a car payment, how to buy groceries. Because remember, we talked about it either last week or a couple of weeks ago. The majority of American citizens could not easily handle a $400 emergency. This
Yeah,
is way more than a $400 emergency.
right. Yeah, it really is, and that's sad to think about. I mean, especially if people are relying on getting a pension or that buyout check, if they hadn't yet gotten it, the delays in those things. There were delays anyway before the government shut down,
There were,
a-
just because of the sheer
and
volume.
and now imagine. I mean, it's going to be a lot worse.
And, we're already seeing economic impacts at airports.
Yes. Nashville
Um,
Airport closed the air traffic control at Nashville Airport being a shut down in evenings because they didn't have enough workers because
yes,
people
and
were calling in sick.
yeah, and then they're having delays getting through TSA lines.
Yep.
Now, Kansas City isn't really feeling that because our TSA is one of the 5 airports that is outsourced.
Yeah.
So our TSA workers are not federal employees. However, it is a federal contract.
Right.
So who knows how long, what reserves their company has to continue offering paychecks.
Yeah. Exactly. Will that company continue providing employees if they're not getting paid from the government? Right.
Right.
So
And
yeah.
and I'm supposed to come up to Minneapolis the first week of November. I'll be up there for an event at Gradient, and I am tempted, if the government doesn't reopen, I may just hop in a car and drive up rather than
Yeah.
running the risk of dealing with airport issues.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's still going on, that's probably not a bad thing to look at and possibly do. That's for sure. Because
Yeah,
by that time, if it's still going on, it'll have gotten bad by then.
it
So
it will it
worse,
will.
I should say.
However, the last government shutdown went 35 days,
Yep, it did.
and we are definitely
2018.
yep. Um, and that would put us right at that 35-day mark. So I'm not
Yeah,
holding my breath on anything. My hope is that cooler heads prevail
yeah,
and logic prevails, and that we get the government open sooner rather than later. Again, my hope is that this podcast is obsolete before it hits the waves,
yeah.
that
I
they
hope so
come to
too.
a resolution either over the weekend or the early part of next week. Let's get people back to work. Let's get them paid for what they're doing. Please, let's get our military paid for everything that they do to protect us.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be before next week because I read last night. I read that they're breaking and they're at a deadlock still, and nothing will be decided until next week because they're taking a break. I mean,
Well,
and
I
why
believe
not? Why not? Why not? Congress take a break while the government is in turmoil. I mean,
why, yes.
they should be in there working 24/7 to fix this thing.
I agree. If you're there to serve the people, then you stay until you have done your job. I mean, if I don't do my job, my clients leave.
Yeah, if you need to stay until 11 p.m. at work to get, a contract done for one of your employees or get money moved, you will do it.
Well, it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
And again, there are a lot of people that are going to feel the impact of this, and it's going to hit our economy sooner rather than later, and people don't realize that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the people say, "Well, okay, data's delayed. The jobs numbers didn't come out because there's a government shutdown." What is that? How does that affect things? It affects the economy. It
It
can
does.
eventually. I mean, the Fed delaying their decision on lowering interest rates affects you. I mean, it affects all of us. What if you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for mortgages to come down to sell your house or buy a new one? I
Or
mean,
what if you're trying to get an FHA loan that hasn't been able to close
yeah,
because
yeah,
FHA isn't working? Uh,
yeah,
And then, take it down to the consumer level. What if you're a federal worker and your child is in daycare and now you can't afford to pay the daycare worker? And suppose you're somebody who is exempt, so you've still got to show up for the job every day, which means you still need the childcare, but you might not have the money to pay it.
right. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it
all
can get into
very,
it's tough.
it will affect people sooner than they realize.
Yeah, it will if it hasn't already. So, there are so many aspects to a government shutdown. I think it's important to stay on top of it, and I think I don't think the news is always doom and gloom, and we don't
Mhm.
mean to be negative or add to that. But a government shutdown is serious, and I don't think people take it seriously enough. This is one of
No,
those things. I
I
mean,
agree.
obviously, if you're a federal employee, there's nothing more serious at this point in time.
Mm,
But wait until you try to get something done or need a government form or need something from the government and you can't get it.
or you were
And
waiting on a passport, or you were
yeah,
waiting, there are so many things that our government does, and we count on them to do their job.
mhm,
And I'm like you. I mean, most of the time when you listen to this podcast, I am not a gloom, despair, and agony on me kind of person.
right.
But this is very much a let's wake up and take a look at what this is. And, I would encourage everybody listening to this to contact your congressperson, contact your two state senators, and tell them that they need to convene and get the job done.
Yeah. Yep, contact your elected representatives and tell them enough and get this thing done. And it is true that there's been 22 government shutdowns since I think the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And the average is 8 days. A lot of them are they're usually 1 day,
Yeah,
between
1 or
1 and
2
8
days.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, between 1 day and 8 days. And really, 8 days or less, the majority of the Americans, it isn't going to affect them directly, and they're not
Mhm.
going to, at least they won't notice it. Even if
Mhm.
certain things have trickled down and might affect them, it's nothing, no big deal, and they won't
Now,
notice it.
thing
But
things that will
when you,
still go out are your Social Security payments and
yes,
that so if you're listening and worried about that, that is something that is still you are still gonna continue to get your Social Security. However, if you're filing for Social Security to start collecting benefits, that could be delayed.
yes. And so, but once it gets over 8 days, that's when federal employees might start missing checks. That's when
Mhm.
the Fed's delaying things. We're delaying understanding what the Social Security is going to look like for the next year. That's when things start to happen that where it's, the lines at the TSA get even longer.
Yes.
Federal workers that are considered essential, more and more of them, if they aren't getting checks, they don't show up for work because
Well, they
they
have to go get another job or do
yeah,
something to bring some money in.
yeah. So
It's not
that's
that
where
they're
it
shirking their
affects.
responsibilities, it's
Yeah,
that they're trying to take care of their families.
right. So then we get into that territory like we did last time, which was ridiculous. 35 days is way too long, and I hope this one is resolved by the time people are hearing this, to be honest.
I do too. I
Yeah.
do too. Like I said, I like it when our podcasts on these subjects are obsolete before they even get out to the public.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that last week, and I would agree. I like that. Usually we're hoping that our podcasts stay current before everyone hears it, but in this case, it would be great if it wasn't.
I know, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, it's just it my heart breaks for the federal workers. My heart breaks for our members of the military. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but a lot of members of the military, especially in the lower levels, deal with food insecurity.
Yeah.
And, for those of you sitting there going, what do you mean? They work for the Army, they get 3 hot meals and a place to sleep.
But they have
A lot,
families.
they do have families.
Yeah.
They do have
And they
families.
travel a lot, so their spouses can't always hold down the high-paying full-time job
No,
because
I mean,
they're moving around.
yeah,
If you're in the military, if you're a
you
military family, you're gonna go wherever you're stationed, and
and you're
that
gonna
could
get
change every
moved.
couple of years,
It
or
can.
sooner. Yeah,
It can.
yeah,
I mean, I experienced that when my dad worked for the VA setting up treatment programs for
sure.
Vietnam vets. We were, gosh, one place we lived there less than 2 years before we went to the next place. I mean, we barely unpacked our moving boxes and had to pack them again.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and my brother-in-law and his family, they, work for the government, and they had a different assignment every 3 years, and
Mm,
so, hard, they both actually ended
yes.
up working for the same branch of the government, so
Mhm.
they could then make that work,
And
right?
have some continuity. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were fortunate in that way, and they were international. They weren't moving. They were a lot of the first 9 years of that were 3 different countries overseas. So, at
My
U.S.
goodness.
embassies. So,
My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah,
But,
he did computer
if
networking at the embassies. He was a computer network guy. So, the thing is, keeping that data secure that's coming in.
yes,
In
I
and out
mean,
of the embassy.
there's still crucial security things that
Yeah.
still need to be done and people aren't getting paid. So,
Yeah, that's
I
tough.
would say, and if you want to help, grab a couple of extra non-perishable grocery items and donate them to a local food bank.
Okay.
Um, it's My prayer is that this all gets resolved sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
but we also need to understand that with economic data being delayed and with branches of the government being, employees being furloughed and not being able to do their jobs, that there is going to be a trickle down and it is going to impact us on a
Yes.
personal level.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it's good to point out, make people aware of it, and so I hope that our listeners will be aware of that. And if they know federal employees, see if there's anything you can do to help them out. They might need help with childcare
Yes.
or other things if they're furloughed or not getting their check. Well, hey, great show, Barb, today. An important topic, and we're going to keep an eye on this. And then when the COLA is released, I want to do a show with you asking you about. We'll do one on Social Security and
Yes.
Social Security maximization, and we'll see what the COLA is going to be and then how that fits in with your overall retirement plans, right?
Yes, I would love to do a show on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And I think we've had a lot of questions from listeners and things about that. So that's important. Barb, how can our listeners get a hold of you if they don't have a financial plan or want to ask investment questions or maybe what they can do about retirement?
They can go to our website, bgwealthmanagement.com. There's a contact us form there that they can fill out. And then Christina in our office will reach out to them and get them scheduled to meet with either myself or one of our other fiduciaries. Or you can call the office at area code 913-553-6222.
All right, Barb, great show today.
Thanks,
Listeners and
Tony.
listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Anchor Your Retirement with our host, Barb Goen.
We'll see you soon.